Good morning. And on behalf of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Niagara Falls, we wish you truly on this first day of January, a truly happy new year. To begin our devotional service on this first day of our year, let me share with you two things that I felt were important as we embark upon 2023. Go out into the highways and byways. Give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it. Let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. That was given to us by John Murray. And I ask you to go within yourself, and as the expression goes, perhaps to the God of your own understanding, or no God at all. But reflect upon these words that I will share with you. It is called a prayer for social connection. We pray we may enlarge our faith and love, that we may think of needs beyond our own. For those who have experienced natural disasters, that they may find compassion, aid, and support in rebuilding their lives. May we help relieve suffering. For those who are oppressed and whose rights are denied, that they may find comfort and strength. May we encourage justice and mercy. For those who govern, who are privileged to guide nations, states, and cities, that they may use their powers thoughtfully with concern and care for all they are responsible for. May we speak our truth in love. For the earth and all its creatures, that resources may be used wisely and natural beauty preserved. May we foster connection and respect for all. For those who live in war-torn areas and places of violence, that their safety may be restored and that conflicts justly resolved. May our hands, hearts, and minds further peace. And for those who work for the benefit of the common good and healing, that they remain inspired and strong. May we offer our appreciation, generosity, and creativity through the power of infinite spirit and one another. So may it be. Amen. As we light our chalice on this day, this first day of January, this first day of the new year, may the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Okay. There's an insert in your bulletin today, which is very appropriate. It's usually sang on New Year's Eve, or actually at the stroke of midnight. And we have found all 7 verses, or should I say Patricia has found all 7 verses. And to begin our service today, we're going to sing verses 1, 2, and 3 as we prepare for our responsive reading. Should old acquaintances be forgot, and never brought to mind. Should old acquaintance be forgot, the days of all lang syne. For all lang syne, my dear, for all lang syne, we'll drink a cup of kindness yet for all lang syne. And surely you will buy your cup, and surely I'll buy mine. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for all this lang syne. If you'll turn in your hymnal to responsive reading, number 544. And if you'll please indulge me, and I will begin the first reading, and if you we will follow each other. The 1st of January is another day dawning. The sun rising as the sun always rises, the earth moving in its rhythms. And so it is. Everything is the same, bound into its history as we ourselves are bound. What shall we do with this great gift of time this year? We are the hearts and minds, the hands and feet, the embodiment of all the best visions of our people. Let us take the step forward together onto new ground. And that was originally given to us by Kathleen McTing. I hope I haven't developed a Molotov cocktail there, because I am a pacifist. We come to that portion of our service called Joys and Concerns. You know, we are all literate people, and even if we were not literate, it would be very difficult, almost impossible for us to ignore the conclusion of this year, the horrific upheaval that occurred just last weekend in and around this great area of Western New York, and especially to our brothers and sisters, 40 plus individuals who lost their lives. Words sometimes fail. So today, I will light a candle, first off, of concern. Concern, as we have already stated, that we take this day, this new year, and utilize it to remember those who have so much less than we do, to remember those who have lost so much, to remember those that are in need. And yet, because this is a day of new beginnings. We can acknowledge that the past is the past. We cannot, no matter how hard we may wish, change it. But we can change now by a commitment, by a covenant with life and with each other. And so I light this candle also of great joy, in essence, to make that commitment to help others as we would wish to be helped in the coming days ahead. Excuse me. Is there anyone else who would like to share a joy or a concern?
Hi, everybody. I haven't been here in a couple of weeks, and I just thought I'd let you know that I'm still alive. It's essentially a good thing. But I've also been extremely sad. And so I wanted to mention a couple of things. One of them is sort of flippant, but it is serious also. The sadness is that my favorite restaurant in Provincetown, Massachusetts, was destroyed in the storm. Finizzi's is gone. They're trying to repair it, but it was a great restaurant, as you remember probably. The windows broke and the water just rushed in. So that's very sad. But also, many of us know of Norma Higgs. Norma Higgs wrote for the Gazette for many, many years. She was a member of the Beautification Commission. She was our secretary for years, right? She is not well, mentally speaking, especially. And she's all alone in her house. And Mary Jo Zacher, who is one of our friends from the Beautification Commission, has been really good with her, but Mary Jo has had knee surgery, so she can't go there. And I'm just horrified that Norma is suffering in her own house, and I couldn't get there. And I don't know who can, but I guess I'm just putting it out there. If anybody knows Norma, send her a card. She might not remember, but it's okay. And I also want to thank you, Bill, for mentioning about Rosemary Sweetman, and also to hear that she really was okay. Because as part of our dwindling caring circle, I'm trying to do what I can to stay in touch with people, but it's very difficult. Our heart goes out to her. I know she didn't probably want to go to Elderwood, but that's where she is. So thinking of all the people who can't get out, who are all alone, it's tough on all of us, and we just have to remember each other and think positively. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, please? Very well. Oh.
Just I keep thinking about them, and I guess everyone does, but my heart really goes out to the folks in Ukraine, and we say this over and over, and maybe it's some of the luster has gone off of it, but still, they deserve to be remembered. It's the first of the year. You know, terrible things, even as recently as yesterday, have made it very difficult there. So just a word for them and to be remembered.
Extremely important. Thank you. Thank you.
I too, I was thinking about the people of Ukraine before this terrible storm hit us. And I was so aware and grateful that I did not lose electricity. And just and grateful that no one in my family came into harm's way. And I am also going to a funeral home today to be with the family of my good friend, Judy Miller, who's lived in the area for practically her whole adult life. And Judy was a friend of mine for at least 50 years. I've known her, and the pandemic has really affected people in my age range because we used to get together once a month for a book group. And then, of course, that was suspended. So in many ways, there are friends that I have not reconnected with, but I'd like to light a candle for Judy, and also for my gratitude that I'm standing here speaking to you and this wonderful community. And I wish us all a good new year.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, I want to reiterate this horrible storm, that my heart, prayers and thoughts goes out to the families that lost loved ones during the storm, whether it's in the cars, trapped in the cars, or in their homes. And yeah, but the other side of the coin too is I have a joy. As I was watching the news, is like I was so happy and impressed that there's a McDonald's, I believe, on Sheridan and Sweet Home. There's a McDonald's that they let in 50 people to ride out the storm. That was so nice of them to do that, and they fed everybody. And I think they were able to watch the Bills game from there. And then there was a few other people too that I found out were helping people in the storm. So, it just shows how we've got some good people here in Buffalo and Niagara Falls area.
Thank you. As we now come to the offering, and also as we prepare for our few moments of quiet meditation or contemplation, we ask you to, I believe you're going to play an offering selection. Yes. And subsequently, afterward, we will look in our bulletin to Spirit of Life number 123 as we prepare for our sermon.
Sheesh.
to me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Thank you. We gather this day, unlike probably any other day, to celebrate, as I mentioned a few moments ago, new beginnings. And we celebrate this year much like we've celebrated every other year, however. And of course, we all know the custom, the tradition. It almost becomes kind of an emotional ritual of making the proverbial New Year's resolutions. It's my life experience that resolutions in religious life are very much like they are in law and politics. They are what is referred to as non-binding. They sound good, they look good, and for about 14 days, they feel good. Subsequently, the luster fades. The lily is no longer gilded, if you will. And what happens is we begin to fall away from those so-called resolutions, those commitments to be better, to do better, or as a friend of mine used to poetically say, listen to our better angels. And so they are non-binding, and we continue to, in our redundancy of life, do the same things over and over and over. And we in our humanity consistently have this notion that we're going to get different results. And yet we have heard in many self-help groups like Alcoholics Anonymous and so many others that the true definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. So what to do? What to do? Well, one of the things I have found is that I believe in the power of redundancy. Now that seems counterintuitive. I just said that it doesn't serve us well. But what I'm talking about is the redundancy of a more positive nature, of a more progressive nature. The reason we gather here on Sunday mornings, the reason we make covenant with each other and covenant with life itself is to strive to do our best to discipline ourselves, to encourage ourselves and each other, to create a better environment. Enlightened self-interest demands that we do so for ourselves, but we are also taught, whether it be in Judeo-Christian tradition or Buddhist tradition or any of the other traditions, that to truly focus on the welfare and the benefit of others not only significantly improves the quality of their lives, but significantly improves the quality of our own. And in so doing, and you've heard me use this phrase many times, and I will use it to my last day on this earth, so that we can indeed consciously, devotedly, and even joyously be participatory in a world that works for everyone. All too often, we make commitments, which to me is almost a synonym at times for resolutions. And perhaps because of our inability to break that cycle, that inner loop that keeps playing over and over in our subconscious minds, and of course, many times also obviously bleeds through, so to speak, in our conscious minds, we fail at those resolutions. And we have to admit to ourselves that there will come a time when we need to take things a little bit more seriously. I think the Unitarian Universalist movement did just that. It did just that, because there came a time when we recognized that though there was so much to be taught and thought about and reflected about and so forth, that many times as Unitarians and Universalists, there was still this notion of, well, if this world isn't as good as we would like to see it, we can contemplate or perhaps reflect on the next one. And that came to, I don't want to say a halt, but it came to a reasonable reflection where we began to understand that it is through, and I've used this term, and I used to think I was pretty unique. I thought I'd coined the phrase, but I've recently, in reading some really excellent Unitarian Universalist history books, there is such a thing as a religious or a spiritual humanist. And that is someone who understands that there are millions and millions, and now, of course, we've just achieved, what is it, not that many weeks ago, we now have 8 billion people on this planet. Heartwarming, isn't it? When you consider global warming, resources, etc., there are some dynamic challenges. And the one gorilla in the room, the one thing we don't talk about is that everybody's praying for, oh my God, the next life. Oh, it's going to be better there because it can't get any better here. We are immobile. We're only human. Or that somehow some divine power, some divine force is going to come and recreate the planet, recreate it and make it, if I may use this turn of phrase, heaven on earth. The Unitarian Universalist said, and I'm paraphrasing, which is I'm oft apt to do, the UU philosophers and theologians would have said, we're waiting, and we're waiting, and the world continues to, yes, progress, move forward. We can send rockets into space. We can cure myriad diseases that were considered incurable, probably just 50 to 100 years ago. We can feed more people than we've ever been able to feed people before. We can do amazing things. But the point ultimately is that in spite of all the things we do, we continue, as was reflected in the prayer that I shared at the beginning of our service. We continue to, I don't want to use the word ignore, but we don't give a serious consideration to how we interact and how that what is vital is right here and right now. It doesn't diminish any individual's faith about an afterlife. It doesn't diminish anybody's faith about the idea or the notion of a divine energy, a sacred force. But what it does is hopefully give us a greater comprehension that we are that sacred force. We are that divine energy expressing ourselves as you and me. And that if we want to have a world that works for everyone, it is not up to some anthropomorphic deity on some far off cloud. It is not up to a few politicians, but that each individual must take an opportunity to look within and say, what am I doing today to make the world a little better, a little more peaceful, a little more verdant? Pardon me. It's my contention that if there is any kind of, and please forgive me for using this choice of words, but I'm trying to paint a picture here, not be rock solid. If there is a so-called destiny for the human species, it is my contention, and this is my spiritual humanism, that when we, in a sense, acknowledge life within ourselves, whatever that means to you, and acknowledge life within each other, and then through that fire of commitment, that's when we speak the fire of commitment, we do recognize that in order to have peace, we must be peaceful. In order to have love, we must be loving. In order to not be, if for lack of a better term, judged or critiqued or condemned for being different, then we should strive to be conscious of the times that we are critical, judgmental, and condemnatory. In essence, that fire of commitment is what that chalice stands for. Because we have come to the conclusion, not only as we celebrate this first day of this new year, but we have come to the conclusion as a faith community that our faith must lie beyond anything and everything within ourselves. That's not arrogance, and it surely is not ignorance. What it is the ability to know that nothing has ever changed on this planet without the commitment, the care, the devotion, and the fire of commitment to make it happen, good or bad. We speak of the Ukraine, obviously a tremendous misuse of not only resources, but of intellect. We are supposed to be rational. We are supposed to be reasonable. And yet we continue to utilize warfare to solve issues between us. I think we have proven as a species, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that if there is to be a greater life, we are responsible, that we must take that fire of commitment. Politicians call this, and have you ever seen how politicians go after an office? Whether it be the presidency or the state legislature, they go after it like a dog after a bone, and the dog hasn't eaten in 3 days. They call that fire in the gut. They call that the devotion to cause, their devotion that whatever they have to do, to the degree that, and here's something that's very important, so that you don't feel that you've got to have the weight of the world on your shoulders, to the degree that you can do it. Sometimes the only thing you can do, and I've seen it reflected this morning in some of the joys and concerns, all you can do is be positive. In that energy of positivity, there is good. There is what is called intention, and it is called by some, the late Dr. Wayne Dyer, a very popular psychologist, it's called living with intention. What has been your intention in the past year? or your intentions? Have they been like resolutions, or will they become like revolutions within yourself and what you can do for the world at large? Again, sometimes, and if you're religiously oriented or spiritually oriented, it's saying a prayer. If you're just striving to be psychologically uplifted, it is making an affirmation, a mental affirmation in your own mentality. Will that, quote, change anything? My dear friends, anyone who has ever studied any kind of religious or psychological studies in terms of personal growth must realize that when we pray or when we strive to be positive, the only thing that changes is you. The only thing. And that hopefully will motivate you to do something. Doesn't have to be big. In some cases, it is big. But it motivates you, and that's the beginning of that fire. That's the beginning of that fire of commitment. It says, I am committed to mankind, or I more appropriately put, to humankind. I am committed to Mother Earth. You know, I used to, and talking with fellow clergy and others of that ilk, we used to discuss how did we get the calling to be clergy. And I've said to people that I've learned that whatever your inner self, that still small voice within, that subconscious mind, however that manifests itself, whatever gets you agitated, angry, PO'd, as the kids would say, is your inner being, your inner compass asking you to do something about it. Do something about it. And again, doesn't have to be large. It says in Christian scripture, and I believe this as strongly as I stand here, there's only one thing that can truly, in my opinion, can truly be dead in this universe. Absolute stone cold dead. And that is faith without works. Because without that fire of commitment, we feel isolated. We feel alone. We feel powerless. For indeed, we are. But when we stoke that ember of commitment, when we stoke that fire of commitment, and it bursts into a burning flame within us, people see that. They take note of it. They want to be part of it because it breeds connectedness. It breeds action, and it breeds the kind of activity that is necessary, as I mentioned earlier, to create, or should we more appropriately say, co-create a world that works for everyone. Our faith tradition has come to its zenith point, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is we are no longer seeking theology and those things that spring forth from the religious or even so-called spiritual life. Our spirituality lies squarely in the fire of commitment to one another, to each other. So that if you go to your grave knowing that you have striven to answer that fire of commitment, you will have lived a good life. You will have lived a fulfilling life. And that is our message, our commitment to social justice, our commitment to all of those things so that we can have less stress and anxiety. And most of the stresses and anxiety, in my opinion, is produced again by the unanswered resolutions, by the unanswered so-called prayers and supplications, because all we're doing is, again, going over an endless loop that ultimately has perhaps some modicum of comfort, but in the ultimate sense offers little or no positive practical solution. And so I invite you I invite you to emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, if you will, take a look at that chalice and what it represents, that fire of commitment. And this first day, make a commitment to whatever you perceive to be the divine presence within you, life, if I can just use that universal expression, and to yourself as a being, a human being who is a steward, who is a willing agent of life to come forth and make that difference. There was a young man I knew a while ago, and he was in his 20s. And pardon me, I'm going to scratch it. I have a better story. It's terrible when you have a better story. Anyway, I ran a soup kitchen for a little while, a couple of years in Rochester, New York. And one year, and I may have shared this with you, but if I did, I'm having a senior moment, so I'm going to share it with you again. They asked me to do some public relations. They wanted me to go to a school and give a little lecture to a group of children. And these kids were about 7, maybe 8 years of age. And they asked some really intelligent questions. What do you feed your guests? What this and that and all sorts of really things. And he said, and I was very impressed. And a little boy raised his hand and to get my attention, I said, yes, young man, what can I say to you? And he said, well, I really love what you do. And I feel like it's something I want to do. There you go. The fire of commitment, that ember beginning to burn. Something somehow appealed to his inner self about what I was doing. And he says, I want to go and change the whole world. I go, yeah, you do, don't you? I says, you know what? When I was your age, and maybe a little bit older, probably about 12 or 13, I wanted to change the world too. And I only learned through all of the bumps and grinds of life that I can only change myself. But I'll tell you what, if you do something small, and Mother Teresa, by the way, reflected this many times, if you do something small, one day at a time, you're going to be amazed at the huge difference you can make. So take that fire of commitment and indeed go out there as individuals and as community, as you have been doing for all these many years in this wonderful, wonderful church. Go out there and be the change that we all wish to see. Thank you and bless you. Now, we have a little bit of something extra. One of the things that I believe very strongly is a line from a book, which, by the way, if you ever get a chance to read it, and some of you are going to call it hocus pocus, but remember, I'm a little bit hocus pocus. It's called The Celestine Prophecy. Written, by the way, by a psychologist and his psychologist wife. And again, The Celestine Prophecy. Horribly written book. You would think it was written by a third grader. But worth the read, because you will be able to, as literate people, discern some of the interesting lessons in the book. It's written as a novel, so to speak. And the most powerful lesson in that book is something very simple. And it goes back to when I mentioned Dr. Wayne Dyer about living intentionally. And he talked about the energy of life, the totality of this thing that we live and move and have our being in. And he said, where intention goes, energy must flow. Where intention goes, energy must flow. And I got to tell you, when we do things with intention, with integrity, with the fire of commitment, it's amazing that energy is almost palpable because we have that common union with each other and within ourselves, with life. And again, amazing things can happen. So I believe that sometimes we need a little help. And I know Unitarian Universalists are not very big on ritual, which is why you light candles, for God's sakes. Anyway. Just a little dig, just a little one. Sorry. However, ritual and ceremony is an outer expression of an inner state, an outer expression of an inner awareness. If we did not respond to these symbolic rituals, these symbolic gestures that reflect an inner state of our spirituality or our intellect, we would not have funeral services, wedding ceremonies. We wouldn't bless our children, whether you call that a baptism or a consecration or a naming, whatever. We are, and we do appreciate ritual. You wouldn't have a parade on the 4th of July. Those are outer expressions of an inner state. So what I asked you to do is help me to participate in what's called a burning bowl ceremony, or what I've called a fire communion. It has been stated by people much wiser than myself that you cannot simultaneously be positive and negative. You cannot hold a positive and a negative thought simultaneously. I believe that. Maybe you do too. What I've asked you to do is remember that many times, because we are creatures of habit and we do play that endless loop, what we end up doing is we take those negatives and we just keep reliving them ad infinitum, it seems. So what I asked you to do symbolically, ritualistically, if you will, is take a card and write down a few things on that card, that 3x5, let's say, things that no longer serve you. Do you find yourself to be too angry a person? Do you want to release that anger? Do you find yourself not as sensitive to the needs of others as you might wish to be? On the list. On the list. Do you want to give up poor health? And of course, that's a general thing. Do you want to give up? Do you want to have better mental health? So you want to give up. In other words, the belief is, and it's really captured beautifully, and I think Patty would agree with me. There's a beautiful song in the, I call it the children's movie, but it's really not just for children, it's for adults. It's the movie called Frozen, and the song is called Let It Go. We can't hold on to the things that are bothering us, hurting us, the resentments and all that. So what we need to do to make room in our consciousness, in our lives, is to release and let go. And this little ceremony will hopefully help us do just that. So I would ask you, I will begin by going to our burning bowl, if you will. I love multitasking. And I will begin with a very brief prayer. And I will take that which I choose to release and let go in the year of 2023, to make room for a greater reality, to make room for a greater sense of being, of peace, of love, and of joy. If you would follow me, those who have chosen to participate, and just light your list, if you will, off of a candle and just drop it in there. And during that period of time, we will be in a brief period of meditation. And Patty will regale us with a beautiful rendition of Alleluia. I release and let go all that no longer serves me, that holds me back, making room for the good and only the good, making room for good and something better. I do this in the love of life, the love of peace, the love of freedom, and in the name of all of creation. Pop it right in there. I don't care. You're doing beautifully. Perfect. Perfect. Old altar boy hands. You're doing great. Thank you. Perfect.
We actually had a minister who did this before, but she got pieces of paper that went lit it.
I tried to find those next time. No, supply and demand. Oop, I got it. I got it. We're not going to let that sucker. There we go. We release, we let go. We are new creations, moment by moment, day by day. But on this day of all days, the first day of a new year, we embrace that sense of newness, that sense of awe and wonder in life, knowing that we participate in it 100%, knowing that the fire that has consumed symbolically those things that have irked us, perhaps betrayed us and held us back, we have released them intellectually. We have released them in every possible way we know how, making room for good and only good and something better. This is our fire of commitment. This is who we are and who we choose to be. Amen. What we're going to,
We're going to finish out the old Lang Syne verses.
yeah. You know, she can get to be so bossy. No. I love you, and you know it, and you know it. We had, just one brief aside, a couple of days ago, I had the privilege of presiding at a burning bowl service in a church near my home. A lady brought something by, and it looked like a roll of toilet paper. I mean, it looked like the Magna Carta, for God's sakes. And when she put it into the flame, I don't know whether it was just the paper or some chemical reaction, but I swear to God, it shot flame about a foot in the air. And I thought to myself, am I dealing with powers here that I have no knowledge of? So be it. Before we get to our announcements, our closing hymn today is verses 4 through 7 of that very popular. I think this is a hymn. I know people call it a song, but this is when Guy Lombardo and the Royal Canadians used to do this. I couldn't have a dry eye. Of course, at that time, I couldn't have a dry glass either, but that's a whole nother story. Let us sing. We too have paddled in the stream from morning sun till night. The seas between us, Lord, and swell since the days of Auld Lang Syne. For old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind. Should old acquaintance be forgot, sake of Auld Lang Syne. For old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind. Should old acquaintance be forgot in days of Auld Lang Syne. For Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll drink a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. Pardon me. Feels like I got a new lung and I can't do a thing with it. Anyway. Our announcements today, through yours truly, shall be brief. Of course, we cordially invite you to stay after the service for coffee, refreshment, etc. In the social hall. Again, as we begin this coming year, I want to thank this congregation, this faith community, for the love and the care that it has shown me every time I'm here. It sometimes overwhelms me, and I'm deeply grateful for it. I will be back here, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, on the first Sunday of February. And those are all the announcements that I have to offer today. Does anyone else have anything they want to share? Okay. Now, one of the things that we're going to do, and I want to give you some preparation for this. We're going to have, of course, the extinguishing of our chalice. And in the area where we're going to do a postlude, our very own Peter has approached us and made a request that we would play a hymn that was very, very traditional during the Christmas holidays. And Peter, do you have something you wanted to read or share with us previous to that?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. No, that's fine. So what we're going to do first is we're going to have our
You want to extinguish the chalice?
yes, I'm going to do that right now. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I was taught how to read somewhere. Okay. Jeez. Let us turn in our bulletin as we read the chalice extinguishing words together. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now, if I could ask Peter to read what he wants to share with us.
The hymn that I'm focusing on is, I heard the bells of the I heard the bells on Christmas Day by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. We played this a few weeks ago and I made the comment that this had been changed considerably when it was made into a hymn. And I think considerably altered. And I'm just taking the opportunity to read you the original poem that was penned by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And then I guess we'll sing this when we, or at least you can see it. It's number 240 in your hymnal. This is the original poem though. And I should just give you a smidgen of background. Longfellow was suffering a lot of personal agony at this particular point. His wife had caught on fire in doing some of the housework and had perished in that fire, caught her dress on fire, and he rushed out and tried to smother it out and burned himself severely, and she died the next morning anyway. And then that was about a year prior to this. It was in the middle of the Civil War, or at the beginning of the Civil War. His oldest son had decided he wanted to join the Union forces. And because Longfellow was in such personal distress, and for other reasons probably too, he refused to give him his blessing. He wanted him to stay home. But the boy went anyway, and in the first real battle that he was engaged in, he was shot through the neck. And they thought he was going to be either dead or paralyzed for life. As it turned out, he managed to get through it. But with all that in mind, Wadsworth wrote this, Longfellow wrote this poem one Christmas morning during that time of his personal suffering. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men, till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from day to day. A voice of chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then from each black accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound, the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair, I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. I find that a very powerful and complicated message penned by Longfellow, who was at that time what would probably have been equivalent to one of our celebrated poets. What do they call him? The poet, yeah, poet laureate or something. I think it's far more complicated. But look at what we've done to it in changing it. I think we've gutted it myself. Let's use your own imagination.
It's on 240. Did we want to sing it?
Sure,
Well, you're going to play it. We can sing it.
sure.
Okay. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play.
Thank you. Go in peace, go in power, go in joy.